guys, it's Sam and this is my August wrap-up. I cannot believe that it is September and that summer to me is basically gone. Whenever September hits, I honestly feel like summer is over, even though we still have the same kind of weather. You know, like September, October, November to me is fall. It doesn't matter when summer technically ends. It's fall. So it's weird, but I'm holding on to summer with the bright lipstick and everything, and we're holding on to summer as long as possible. I read a total of 7 books in August. One of those was an audiobook, and the rest of those were actually ARCs because I participated in ARC August. ARC stands for Advanced Reader Copy, for those of you that don't know. And ARC August is an event that is sponsored by Read, Sleep, Repeat, which is a blog. I will link them down below. And basically, it's a kind of readathon, read-along thing where everybody reads their ARCs, their backlogged ARCs, whatever. You just read ARCs that whole month in the hope that you can get your ARC pile a little bit smaller. So I got through 6 ARCs, which are upcoming releases for the next couple of months. So the first book that I read this month was Entwined by Heather Dixon. This was the one that I listened to on audiobook. I do have a physical copy, obviously, but I listened to it on audiobook because I just didn't know when I was going to get around to reading this, so I just thought an audiobook would be easiest and I'll see if I like it, and I actually read this over a couple of months. But this is a YA fairy tale retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses story. I'm not familiar with the original basically at all, but in this story there are 12 princesses and they are banned from dancing, which is their favorite thing to do because they are in mourning because their mother dies at the very beginning of this story. And so they want to dance, all they want to do is dance, and they're all in assorted ages from the age of 16 on down. And they end up finding this magical place in the castle that they live in where they can go at night and dance, and it's kind of like this magical place, but it's a little more sinister than that, and they kind of get tangled up in some magical badness, and the story kind of goes from there. This was okay. I have now read 2 of Heather Dixon's books, and I feel like her YA is a little more on the younger side, kind of on the almost middle grade side. I felt like the first half of this book was really slow. I had this on 2-speed, and I still kind of struggled with it. It was just like, when is the plot going to go anywhere, and what's going on, and everything, and the characters are very immature. The main character, I think, is 16 or 17, and she is caring for basically all of her sisters, but she's also just kind of immature, and all they're caring about is dancing, and it's a little kind of all over the place. But the second half of the book definitely gets better. There's a lot more, like I said, sinister things going on. There's a lot more kind of magic, and the characters kind of step up a little bit, and I really enjoyed that. And it's kind of cute. It's kind of like a fantasy of manners because it does take place with like princesses in a castle and this kind of period. So there is some kind of like pairing off with some of the older girls and a little bit of romance in there, which I thought was pretty cute. But overall, I gave this one 3 stars. It wasn't super strong, it was enjoyable, and I liked the narrator. But I think if I would read this in physical form, I really would have kind of slogged through it because the first half, like I said, isn't very strong. The second book that I read in August was Legacy of Kings by Eleanor Herman. This book has already been released, and I've actually already done a spoiler-free review on it, which will be linked on the screen. But this is a new young adult fantasy, historical fantasy series set around Alexander the Great as a teenager and all the people surrounding him. It's a multiple POV fantasy, and there's a lot going on. There is a ton of setup in this book for the rest of the series, and there are a ton of characters, so even if I did a very brief synopsis, it would just take too long in this video. So if you're all interested in this book, go ahead and check out my review, and I'll talk about it more there. But I really ended up enjoying this one and gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I then picked up Hello, Goodbye, and Everything in Between by Jennifer E. Smith. This is another ARC that I got from BEA this year, and this one was just released on September 1st. This is a story of Claire and Aiden who are about to go away to college the very next day. This takes place over one night, and they are trying to decide if they want to stay together or break up. I think they've been together for 2 years at this point, so basically they're going through all these things that they did in their hometown and these special places to them, and they're kind of going through this like checklist almost of all these places and kind of deciding if they want to stay together or break up. It's been a conversation they've been having the entire summer. They can't decide, etc., etc. So this ended up being a lot cuter and a lot more tug at your heartstrings than I thought it was going to be. I've never read anything else by Jennifer E. Smith, but I hear she's kind of like a fluffy author, and this was a little bit fluffy, but I thought that the subject matter was very realistic because I think it's something that a lot of people do go through when they're going away to college if they have a relationship in high school and they're deciding if they want to kind of carry on with it. And the situations were pretty realistic. Yes, there was some stuff that was kind of like, oh, that's a pretty easy setup, that kind of thing, but the side characters were realistic, and the relationship here I thought was very realistic for a high school transitioning into college relationship, and the ending was also very realistic. I wasn't sure how it was going to wrap up, and I didn't want there to be a really easy ending, and there really wasn't. It was actually kind of the best ending that it could be. So if you're in the mood for kind of a realistic but also fluffy and kind of cute but also a little bit tug at your heartstrings book that's rather short, I would definitely give this one a go. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I then picked up Walk on Earth a Stranger by Ray Carson, and this one is going to be released on September 22nd. This is another one that I picked up at BEA this year. I actually buddy read this with Adriana at Perpetual Pages, and we had a great time buddy reading this, let me tell you. This is the first book in a new historical fiction fantasy series, and it's about Lee Westfall, and she lives during the gold rush in America, and she can sense gold in the earth. And not everyone knows the secret about her, but some things happen in her hometown in Georgia that end up making her have to travel across the country to California during the gold rush. This was an awesome start to this new series. This definitely leans more historical fiction than fantasy, at least in this first book. There is that fantasy element of Lee being able to sense gold, but overall it isn't very heavily focused on the fantasy elements. It's definitely more focused on the historical fiction elements. If you played Oregon Trail in like grade school, the computer game, you will love this. This is definitely a survival story. It's definitely very realistic. It's definitely hard-hitting. Lee's actual name is Leah, but her nickname is Lee, but she ends up transforming kind of into Lee because she needs to dress like a man in order to get across country safely and in order to run away from what is happening back in her hometown. And there's a lot of discussion in here about gender issues and female relationships and feminism and the dangers of the time period and everything kind of all wrapped into one. It was pretty much everything I wanted. It is a very realistic Western story. It also has a discussion about race and stuff because there's a lot of issues of Native Americans versus the white people that are going across the country and stealing land, and it's just amazing. There's so much discussion going on. I've already filmed a review for this, which will be up closer to release date, but I definitely recommend this one, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I then picked up Fans of the Impossible Life by Kate Scalza. This one comes out on September 8th, and I requested this for review from HarperCollins. This is a YA contemporary story surrounding 3 characters, Jeremy, Mira, and Sebi, and they form an unlikely friendship. They all are having a lot of issues separately, and we get all of their perspectives. So they're having a lot of mental health issues, just a lot of issues as far as like school and everything else, and they form an unlikely friendship, and we follow their story. The synopsis describes this as a bisexual love triangle, and I was very interested in that because bisexuality is not something that is very much in focus even in mainstream LGBTQ fiction, so I really want to check this one out, but end up being really disappointed in it. I've already done a spoiler-free review, which I will link on the screen, but I think this fell flat in a lot of ways. I liked a lot of the characters, and I liked the way that it was written, but I think that there's a lot of issues that weren't really delved into the way they could have been. There's a lot of mental health issues that aren't really addressed in here. There's also some issues of consent as far as sexual activity that I didn't like and that I had a lot of problems with. And there's also the fact that none of the characters are actually in canon bisexual. None of the characters label themselves as bisexual, and like I said, a lot of things that were problematic weren't addressed. I go into all of it in my review, so if you're interested in checking out this book and want to see some of my thoughts, go ahead and check out my review on it. I gave this one 2.5 out of 5 stars. I then picked up another book that was supposed to be a bisexual love triangle, and that is Cut Both Ways by Carrie Masrovian. This one was just released on September 1st, and this one was sent to me again by HarperCollins for review. So I picked this one up right after Fans of the Impossible Life because this one was also described as a bisexual love triangle, and oh my god, I had so many problems with it. This is about Will. At the beginning of the story, he has had no kind of experience with girls or anything like that, and he ends up getting drunk with his best friend who is gay, and they end up kissing, and then the next day or week he ends up meeting a girl, and they end up hooking up, and they end up dating, and he ends up throughout the rest of the story hooking up with both of them. So it's a bisexual love triangle, but not really, and it's really problematic, and I had a lot of issues with that. I've already filmed a spoiler-free review for this, but let's just say that there are a ton of issues with this. I did not like the writing style. It is trying to be very crass and blunt and kind of raw, but I didn't really get that kind of impression from it. It seemed like it was just kind of trying too hard. Also, the main character is insufferable. He is so annoying. He is so selfish. He is bigoted in a lot of ways, and I just didn't like him whatsoever, and I didn't know why the 2 people that he was messing around with were even putting up with him at all. And also, there is a lack of plot in this story. It's pretty much a bunch of sexual activity, which I don't tend to have a problem with in books, but it was basically just sex scenes interspersed with a little bit of family drama that wasn't really fleshed out, and the plot was basically nothing. The main character had no consequences for his actions whatsoever, and there was no plot. It is just kind of like a segment of this kid's life where he has no repercussions for his actions, and it ends. Like I said, I have a full spoiler-free review coming, think it's coming up on this Monday, so if you're interested in my full thoughts, go ahead and check that out, but I gave this one 1 out of 5 stars. So after those few disappointments, I felt myself kind of slipping into a reading slump and knew I had to bring out the big guns, and so I picked up Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. As you guys know, the Grisha trilogy is my favorite fantasy series of this year thus far, and I was putting off Six of Crows. I got it at BEA this year, and I didn't want to pick it up because I was so nervous about reading it because I just love the Grisha trilogy so much, and I wasn't sure how this was going to go, and I was just nervous about it, but I was pretty sure I was going to love it, and I was not wrong. I'm so glad I picked this one up because I needed it at that time in my life. This is the first book in a new duology from Leigh Bardugo. This takes place in the same universe, the Grishaverse, that the Grisha trilogy takes place in. It takes place kind of in a different country, and it's with completely different characters. And this beautiful book is a heist story. And I don't know if you guys know, but heist stories are pretty much my favorite things to read about when you have a giant cast of characters that are all criminals, all thieves, all kind of bad people, teaming up together, kind of an unlikely band of characters teaming up together and becoming friends and going on this heist journey. It just gives me life. I love it so much. And that is what this is. And I am going to film a full review on this. This book is released on September 29th. I'm going to be filming a full review and gush on it. I loved it so much. I loved it probably as much as I love the Grisha trilogy, but for different reasons. This is a multiple POV story, so you get almost all the people on the crew, their perspective, and it is written so well. It really opens up the entire Grisha world into just everything on the map pretty much is kind of explored. You get people from different countries instead of just Ravka, which is the main country in the Grisha trilogy, and you get tons of different people, you get tons of different cultures and customs, and everything, and all the characters are so different, and you also get a little bit of hints to the Grisha trilogy. So a lot of people have been asking me if they should read the Grisha trilogy first. I think you should. If you tried to read the Grisha trilogy and didn't like it, I still think you could like this one a lot. It's completely different, but I think if you've read the Grisha trilogy, you will get a ton more out of it. You'll be more connected to the culture, you'll know about the Grisha, you'll know about certain characters. There's different Easter eggs kind of dropped in here about the Grisha trilogy, which I think you'll really enjoy, and you'll kind of be able to see some of the aftermath of what happens in the Grisha trilogy. So I would definitely recommend reading the Grisha trilogy first. But if you tried to read the Grisha trilogy and for some reason couldn't, then you still could pick this up. But basically what I'm saying is this book was amazing. I fell in love with all of the characters. There are multiple ships in here that actually rip out my heart, and I am so invested in these character stories. I'm actually so upset this is just a duology because I would gladly take a trilogy or a 6-book series just on these characters. I love them so much, and I already cannot wait for the next book. Obviously, I gave Six of Crows 5 out of 5 stars. So that was it for August. Comment down below, let me know what your favorite book that you read this month was. I would love to know. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!